Hi everyone, thank you for joining the webinar. This is the second webinar of a series of two. The first webinar was done last week and was more focusing on a high-level introduction of what document AI is and what it can be used for. And this session is more going to deep dive a bit deeper into the code. So actually building things, reviewing cookbook, and then reviewing some code together. And I guess as a way of introduction, hi, I'm Nico Javro. I'm working at Mistral AI as part of the Solutions Architecture team, and I have with me Jan.
Hi there, Ian Matthew, also part of the Student Architecture team. Nico's going to be driving most of the content today, but I'll be hanging around the chat, so happy to answer any questions during the webinar or shortly after.
Cool, and we'll give it a few more seconds for people to join in. As you do, I'm going to start sharing the rest of the presentation. Yes, and what we'll start with is more of a very, very brief TLDR of what we saw last time. And I guess I try to keep the key bullet points. So before we jump into the code, just looking back, zooming out, this is kind of the overall stack that Mistral is offering the market. We started more at that foundation layer, as most of you must be aware. So obviously providing and creating our own models, but have since then expanded into different areas. So more in the compute layer with Mistral Compute being available in 2026, then also providing Mistral AI Studio that is providing you a platform layer, if you will. So it's a big toolkit where you can use to build your AI applications on. And then on the top layer, you're going to have productized offering or actual solutions like document AI that we are going to focus on today. And on the side, so it's more of a on side way, you have not just the technology stack, but you have more people and solutions that we provide. And by that, we mean that we're going to have a whole team of solutions architects, like myself and Jan, but also we can give enterprise access to our science team or applied AI engineers, depending on the use case. So that's very, very, very brief overall picture, just to understand what Mistral offers. In terms of the context within which we have deployed document AI, the overall, I'm sure everyone is very familiar with all the challenges, but document AI is really meant to help you with extracting and deriving data from unstructured documents. When you do so, usually you have four types of challenges. One is that you need to support a vast range of modalities, but also file formats, input quality can vary. So that's a big challenge, obviously. You're going to have, even for one type of file, you're going to have sometimes different type of layouts. A good example is W-2s in the US. So for people not living in the US, that's going to be the tax document that you receive from your employer. And the information is the same across documents, but the layout can vary from companies to companies. So that's a good example. And sometimes that data is going to live in basic layouts, complex layouts. Sometimes it can be graphs, sometimes it can be tables. Yeah, it's going to be a vast range of layouts. You're also going to have the data itself, the nature of the data. The data can be basic, but it can also be highly specialized. So yeah, sure, you could be processing a very straightforward invoice where everything on this document is going to be very simple for a generic model to understand, but sometimes it's going to be highly specialized, like oncology diagnostic documents, for example. In that case, that's where generic models might start to have degraded performance at some point, and where fine-tuning or things like that can become interesting. And finally, anything you do, at least given what Mistral is focusing on, we must operate at scale. And that means operating at scale in terms of accuracy, so great accuracy across the board, but also in terms of latency without sacrificing the privacy and confidentiality of the data. So being able to keep everything safe, and deploying the model wherever your data is, not the other way around. So that's it for a very brief summary of what we saw as the challenges to tackle these challenges. That's Mistral AI created Document AI, which is document processing solution. And in a nutshell, what it does is it's combining traditional OCR, so just optical character recognition, with the added strength of vision models. And by combining both, we believe that you have a solution that is much stronger and then can do more than just extracting the data that is in there. You can fully enrich the full overall process. How it works concretely, if we focus on the full solution, you're going to provide the solution document. So that's what you see on the left-hand side. It's going to process that document. So it's basically exposing just a one-stop shop endpoint as a developer. You just submit the doc with potentially some configuration. And what you're going to get as an output is a markdown. So that's what you're, I'm sure, familiar with. So markdown output of every single pages. Then you're also going to have every images that have been detected with their associated B boxes. And finally, you're going to have these extra two that are the document annotation. So that's you're getting a structured output of your variables, or what we're going to see that in just a second, but it's basically you're defining exactly what you want to get to extract or derive from that document, and you're going to get it as a structured output, so JSON format. And you can get the exact same for every single images that we have extracted. You can run the exact same set of rules and extraction rules. Moving on to the next. That's just a few ideas. We're going to go really deep dive in now in just a minute, but just to to see again some of the more advanced usage that we've seen last time. Annotations can be great when it comes to doing data relationship. So you don't want just have a dump of the data, but you want to start organizing. So doing nested objects, representing data in arrays to based on, for example, tables. You might want to do some document classification. So what type of document are we processing? You have compliance use cases. You can add a layer of logic using some light prompt engineering. You can reformat values, and as mentioned earlier, you can also do some fine-tuning. But without further ado, let's jump into the actual, let me close this. Let's jump into the actual cookbook. So the way here, I'm going to walk you first through one of our cookbook, and then some code that I've written just for this webinar. If you want to do the same, right now or later, you can also follow along. And it's basically, you're going to our documentation page, and you're going to have cookbooks. And cookbooks, you're going to have OCR. In the OCR, you're going to have a few cookbooks available. We're going to focus on the basic one for now, but you're going to have, this one is great. The first one is great when you want to see a more advanced use case that is a bit more real life scenario. Here, I'm going to start with the basic one that is just going to show you how OCR is done, pure OCR is done, and then how annotation works before we dive into a different type of code. So just following along, yeah, still connected. It's basically I'm sure you will be familiar with the cookbook. So it's basically you're going to have a mix of annotations and actions that you can run. Just to save time, I've already did the installation of the requirements. I made sure not to leak my API key on this stream. And basically, let's start here with this. And let's load a first function that is going to allow me to encode PDF that is downloaded locally in base 64 to be able to run this part of the code, where basically what we do, very simple scenario just to get us started. Well, we import the packages, then we're going to define the documents that I pre-downloaded just to save time. We're getting the base 64 version, the base 64 data of that PDF. And then we call the central endpoint I was mentioning earlier with this client OCR process. I indicate the model, that is Mistral OCR latest. That's going to be, I know it says OCR, but it's going to cover the full of doc.ai. And what we're doing right now is we're just going to leverage OCR because we say the document is, well, we're going to provide a document URL. We provide the document data in the document URL. I could, if I had a signed URL instead of the base 64 data, I could also just drop the signed URL here, would work exactly the same way. And I'm going to mention that I want to include any image that is going to be detected. I want to return it as part of the response as base 64 so that I can reuse it later. And then I'm just going to print everything, basically do a dump and print. And as you can see, very simple, what I get back is the markdown where it's basically, it's one page for now, but it's going to give me just the markdown version of everything that was detected by the solution. So pretty dry for now, but at least you can see how you can very easily, in a few seconds, submit the document, get the markdown, and get started. Now, if we want to have something that looks a bit better, just for demo purposes, here, what we're doing is we're just going to have the markdown be, formatted a bit more. So basically respect the formatting of the markdown so that it's easier to read. And we're going to recreate the document. So basically that's the PDF that we submitted it's the research paper on our first model, Mistral 7B. So you're going to have the first part. And then as you can see in the code, we're also going to use the base 64 data of the images that is returned back from the OCR in order to be able to just embed the images as we'll be creating the document. So I won't go through the whole document, but it's just to give you a sense of every time there was an image, we can replace it with the base 64 data that we received, and then we have all of the text here is the markdown that we are reformatting, basically, the tables and everything. So that was very, very simplistic scenario when you just want to do OCR. Now, how do you do if you want to start using annotations? So annotations, if you remember, we can do two types of annotations, what we call document annotation. So that's when you want to use the vision model to mostly extract data, written data, so text data or table data across the document, and you're going to define a set of variables. Exactly. We're going to see exactly how in a second. And we have the bbox annotation, which is the set of rules that we run for every single image. So here we're going to leverage both. And the way you do this, very simple. If you're using the Python SDK, like what we're doing in today's example, you're just going to, the easiest way is just to use Pydantic and to just define a Pydantic class for each. And in this case, what we're going to do, we're going to have for document annotation, we're going to have a class that we call document. We're going to set a parameter as, or a variable set as a language. It's going to be a string, and the description is going to be, we want to have the language of the document in an ISO, yada, 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 in English, or in English, French, or you get it. We're going to have also a field for summary, and the description that is also going to act as the prompt in this case, a summary of the document. And finally, we're going to have authors here. List is going to indicate a pydantic that, or indicate a solution that we want to return, to extract in an array of string, in this case, where we want to list all of the authors that contributed to the document. So that's for the class we're going to use for document annotation. And for the bbox annotation, what we're going to have is image type, graph, text, table. So it's basically generating some metadata for us. And then a description of the image, so that we can, just have as text, we can see, we can understand what the image was about. And so let's run this to define the class. And now that we have the pydantic classes, we can modify slightly the way we call the OCR model. You can see that we still use client OCR process, but we're going to add a couple of lines now. We are using pages here to say that we're only going to process the first 8 pages of the document, and we're still going to provide the document as we did earlier. Apologies. And we're going to define the bbox annotation format here, leveraging the class that we have defined. And for document annotation, we're going to do the same, leveraging the document class that we have defined. Here, in this call, we want to save a bit on bandwidth, and we're not interested to get back the base64 data for the images that we detect, and we just want to drop everything there. So let's process. Might take a while because it's on a collab, but let's see how long it's going to take. And you can see that we indent just to make it a bit easier to read. And what we get back is this, right? So we still have the pages with the markdown as we add at the beginning. But now we're going to have a few more things. In images, you can see that we still have the images with their bboxes, but we have this part added, the image annotation, for every single images that were detected. And in there, you can see that we have the image type. So it detects that it was the picture of the text, Mistral 7B. And then it's going to give us a description, the image display, the text Mistral AI. Same thing for other images. You can see that it detects the graph, and we can get a description of the graph. And it's going to have that for every single image that it detects in the document. And if I keep scrolling, I'm going to reach at some point the document annotation, which is where you're going to have the document annotations, as the name suggests. And here you're going to have the set of fields that we have defined that were, if you remember, language and summary, among others. And you can see that language, it did detect that it was in English, so it added the EN notation to respect the prompt that we gave it. And we're going to have a quick summary of the document. The document introduced Mistral 7B. And if we scroll all the way, we're going to have also the authors, the array of authors as instructed. Just to make our life slightly easier, let's print this in a more human-friendly version. And you can see that we have the exact same data. So we have the document annotation, language, English, summary, that's a summary, authors, and an array. It's all of the authors that were mentioned as part of the document. And then we can drop the bbox images. So that's how you can very easily start submitting documents and processing them and getting the data you need. Overall, I would say the document annotation it's great because it's contextualizing the data. So it's not just you get a dump of characters that were recognized, and then you need to have a full pipeline to process, to make sense out of what you have extracted. In one endpoint, one go, you can get the actual extract, like the raw extract, that the characters that were extracted, but also a contextualized data from it. And that data can be just purely extracted or derived, right? As we saw, the English that was detected. So it's data that is kind of in the document, because the document is in English, but it's not. You have nowhere in the document that says the page. Well, basically the language used is English. So it's great to start generating metadata and to start deriving more data out of what you have. And the fact that it's returning everything as part of a structured JSON that is guaranteed to match exactly what you're telling it to give you is going to make downstream use far more easier. So now it's far simpler to have this be just a part of a much bigger workflow. So to use it with tools or workflows. Sorry. It's also great when you need to add a layer of logic or reformat slightly your data. And one extra thing is it's going to run on the overall document, or at least the pages that it's processing, not just doing the logic, applying the logic character by character, which for some fields will be very important. And for Bbox, one of the key points I think worth mentioning is because you can run this set of rules for every single images that you encounter in your document. It is great when you are part of a much bigger process, especially if you're trying to process documents to feed pipeline ingestion an ingestion pipeline in a RAG context. It's great to be able to have summarization of the description of the fields, because like that, you can actually have, now that you have a text version of that the images, you can now index this and start doing some searches as part of your RAG, which means that now you have included all of these images, all of the data that was kind of present in your images. It's now part of something you can look for and get as part of your RAG results. So for that's all I wanted to show in for this cookbook. You can I invite you to do far more and to go through all the other cookbooks. But one thing I wanted to also do with you is maybe deep dive a bit more into an ad hoc example. So I'm going to keep it simple, but I just wanted to make sure we could see some more advanced usage of document AI. And for that, we're going to use this version of the code. So still using Python SDK, you could be using our REST API by just sending HTTP request. It's very simple, very similar. The only key difference is you're not going to define the class as, obviously you're not going to define a class as part of an HTTP call, but you're going to define a custom schema as part of your payload that you send to the API endpoint. But this basically we are using the custom schema standard, so it shouldn't be too difficult for you to do some translation between what you see on this screen here with Python with what you would need to do with an HTTP endpoint. So in terms of what we have here on the screen, so obviously we're going to have the core libraries that we're going to import. We're going to have the Mistral AI libraries also, Pydantic. Then we're going to initialize the client. I wanted to show you two ways of interacting with your documents. One that is if you have local file here, where we do the exact same logic as what we done for the cookbook, and where we are going to encode the image. And if you have more of a signed URL, that's what you're going to do right here. if I'm looking at what we have a bit below, so we're going to go back to the classes, but just to show you a few more parameters that you can use when you call your OCR, when you call the OCR. You now have seen model and document. You have seen pages as well, but I wanted to show you some optional parameters with image limit. Let's assume you have a document that has a lot of images. You can define a max limit if you need to save processing time, or if you need to save just compute, and you only care about the first 10, for example, images in your document, you can definitely set a limit like this. And you've already seen the include image base 64. Now, in terms of the classes, let's do something. Let's see a few different things. So, if we're going to start with the client data, here what we're going to define is we're going to do a nested object where, well, actually, before we do, apologies. Let me show you the document we're going to work with. So the document we're going to work with is going to be this one that we used as part of the session last week, where you're going to have a few pieces in that document, but it's just calling your attention on the fact that we have a part where we have a client being represented. So basically you have a client name, client phone, client email, and a few things. You're going to have someone authorizing the work with a signature. And we're going to have a table here with different items in that table. That's basically just to set the scene. This is the document we're going to work with. And as you can see, we're going to represent that concept of the client and extract its customer ID, his name, his address, and his email. What I wanted to highlight is to do a nested object, we're going to do a identity class that we're going to then use in our main class, right? So here you can see that I nest the classes, which is going to end up with the structured output being itself nested in the same way. A few other things to call out is we're going to have this one, customer ID. So the reason why I did this here is to show you that the solution is going to be smart enough to do its best, basically to detect to understand what you're trying to extract based on any information that you're giving it. In this case, I'm just labeling the field. I just say it's customer ID, and I don't give it anything. I don't give it any description. I'm doing this just to show you that description is optional. We would recommend you to have a description, but it's definitely optional. The model is going to do its best to understand your purpose and deliver on that purpose. And for the rest, you can see that I'm defining them as string with very basic descriptions. Then we're going to have a few other things. You're going to see that we can represent the data as a nested object here. We can also represent the data as an array. So in this case, it's just for the sake of the demo. We ask it to list all the dates that it can find in the document and return them as part of an array. It's going to be called dates. And you're going to see that we can also represent the data as an array of objects with that line 42. So services and neighbors, that's going to refer to the table where we list all of the services and neighbors as part of that were given as part of the work order. And you can see that we do this by combining both things that we saw just earlier. We say it's a list, so it's an array, and we're going to use not just a string, but we're going to use a class that we have defined here that is basically going to extract every single column that is part of that table So name, hours, rate, and amount. And for each, we have defined the type as string or float. Apologies. In terms of the parameters, the other variables that we're trying to have, that should be better now. You can see other use cases that we have explored in text so far. So we're going to do the document type, where we basically are going to ask the model to do its best to detect the type of document we're working with. Here as well, you can see that the prompt can be very generic document type, or if you want to boost your accuracy, you can make it far more specific. So if you have just, let's say, a finite list of document types, I would encourage you to list the exact types. And what you'll see is a significant improvement on accuracy, if you're struggling with accuracy. We're going to have for the compliance, so that's where you can have booleans, and when you can start to see how you can use the description more as actual prompt. Here we're going to have is work authorized as a boolean, so it's going to look for the signature. Do we have a signature that is for authorizing the work? If yes, then return true. If no, then return false. And finally, we're going to have order date in US format. So that's how you see how we can use not just extract, but we can start playing with reformatting or doing more as part of the task that we do. And what we're going to do is we're going to have the order date, which in the document is in ISO format. So year, month, day, and we're asking it to extract the order date, but reformat it to match the US date format. So tying everything up together, and then just dumping it and printing it. We're going to let it run because of my streaming setup. It might take some time. Okay, let me make this bigger to see now what we have. And what we get back is this, where you can see that based on this document, where we have the table, the client information, and the signature, we're going to have the client represented as we wanted as a nested object with the customer ID. Even if we didn't give any description, it understood that we were interested in this cell. Then we're going to see that it extracts the name, it extracts the address, the email correctly. You're going to see all the dates that it was able to extract from the document and add them as an array. Just one interesting bit on this is you can even run the exact same thing with a string. Let's assume you have in a form, you have comma delimited values. You can definitely say, return this as an array. The model is going to be smart enough to split on commas and return every single value as a row in your array. So very interesting things you can do, especially when you zoom out and you understand that you can deliver a lot of value with this solution when you include it as part of a bigger workflow. Finally, you can see that the document type that it came up with is a work order. That's good enough for me. If it doesn't work in your situation, you can guide the model a bit more. We can see that yes, a signature was detected, and that was for is work authorized. As part of the bigger demo we did last time, you could see that we had also detection of multiple signatures in different places, but basically that's how you would do it. You can see the reformatting, so order date, it's potentially this one that was detected, but was reformatted as expected to this value. And the table here is with all of these columns, you can see is now represented in a way that is going to be much simpler to use downstream, either to store in the database or to use downstream. And you can see we have 4 entries for the 4 rows, and we're going to have a name, hours, rate, and amount for each of them. So that's how you can very quickly and fairly simply, fairly easily do this. Obviously, you can always go further. You can make that description, that prompt as complex as you want. Usually, we would always recommend you to start simple and only add complexity when required. A few tips if you start needing to go a step further. It's kind of the tips that you're already aware if you do prompt engineering with, in a non-document processing context. So you can define formats, so either the format of the input or output. You can give it, you can mention anchors, like the column headers or where it is in the doc. If the selection has a fixed list of options, usually, as I said before, providing that list is going to help. All of these are going to be kind of basic tips that are really going to help you if need be. And to tie this, to wrap this up before we do a Q&A, so as last time, how can you get started? The best way to do it, very simple. You go to AI Studio on Mistral. You can create an account for free. You can get your API keys. And what I would encourage you to do is to refer to the cookbook. So we did a part of a very simple cookbook today. You'll see that we have far more cookbooks. And you can also review the API documentation. And that will give you what you need. Before we do the Q&A, just to zoom out a bit. So what I showed you is how do you build something with a solution. But I also wanted to touch upon on why we think it's very useful in some actual real life use cases. Overall, that's what you're going to have on the right-hand side. So regardless of your use case, some of the benefits of using DocAI with Mistral is you're usually good compared to the rest. To competition, you're going to have usually competitive pricing. You're going to have models that you can fine-tune, either yourself or through our teams. So as an enterprise, you can, if you need help to fine-tune, you can definitely get that help from our teams. And we can deploy basically wherever your data is. So that means if you want something super fast and easy, you can just leverage what we did in this demo. You can leverage our serverless offering, right? So it's just you hit our API endpoints. It's simple. We are compliant with obviously all of the European privacy rules and regulations. We can enforce zero data retention so that we don't log anything. So you can go there. But if you're part of an enterprise, for example, that is heavily regulated, and your data just cannot leave your premises or your network, then we can also deploy all the way to something that is air-gapped. So either on bare metal on your own, running on your GPUs that are on your premises or on your own VPC, if you have one. So that's if we just focus overall what's true as long as you work with Document AI. If we look at a few use cases where we think Doc AI is very interesting, is one, when you do processing in pure OCR context. So that's you're going to get a very fast processing. So when you just use the OCR model, it's very, very light, so it can go very fast. You also have a small footprint, which can be very useful, especially if you need to be in that kind of air-gapped environment that we talked about. Being able to deploy on a smaller footprint is going to be very useful. And the overall performance are very good, as the benchmarks I'm sure you've seen attest. And that's usually true for handwriting, scanned, and the rest. As I mentioned during the demo, um, with the RAG ingestion pipeline context, it's going to be very interesting because it gives you just a one-stop shop endpoint, a great developer experience. You send the doc, you have instructions, and you can use annotations to generate metadata to make sure that things that wouldn't be part of your RAG are now going to be included, right? For the images, for example, as we said, or generating the metadata with document annotations. So all of that, really great use case. And if you're more part of as part of a workflow, so for example, a very common scenario here is for banking industry doing document AI as part of a KYC process. The fact that you're getting the structured output without further processing, so it's not just the characters that you get, it's you get structured output that you can work with. That's usually great. The extraction is also not tied to the layout. You can see that in the examples that I showed you earlier, I never described where the data is. I never said, hey, it's a table like this, you have a specific location. So if my underlying layout changes, I don't need to change my code, which is very interesting compared to some processing pipeline that you might be more familiar with. And finally, there's a part that is very interesting with automating the checks and compliance logic and the potential to reroute things downstream as part of the solution. So that's how would wrap up the this solution, this demo of the solution, and then maybe Jan, let's get started with some Q&A.
Yeah, absolutely. So, Nico, thank you so much for running through that. What I did was I was keeping an eye on the chat during the presentation. I figured I could just probably bucket a lot of the questions. So I'll go through maybe the 4 or 5 buckets that I found, but if anything comes up in the meantime, everyone please feel free to chime in the chat. So number one, how to access the Mistral OCR service. So if you visit the Mistral.ai webpage, you should be able to sign up for a free account. There's a relatively generous like free tier as part of the API, but you can also switch to a paid plan if you need additional processing throughput. So the best way to get the API key is just by setting up an account. I saw a few questions here about handwriting. So the model is quite good with processing handwriting. This is part of the example Nico showed here, as well as how you would extract handwritten text out of a form. So you shouldn't have any issues, but the improving our performance on handwriting is always top concern. So this performance should only get better through like iterative releases with the model. Next question or bucket I heard a few questions on were how the model will handle diagrams. So again, I would point to the section Nico presented around bounding box annotations, or just doing document annotations. So when you're processing the document with bounding box annotations, what it'll do is extract the bounding box of the relevant image. You can also re-embed this with the description into the output JSON. So again, model is very performant, especially when it's using the vision language model on looking at a diagram, interpreting what's going on, and then either providing a summary or extracting key information that's required there. A few questions here popped up around bounding boxes as well. So I think the distinction I want to make is between bounding boxes for images versus text. So when you're using the bounding box annotation flag, you will extract the images as a bounding box. So in the output, you'll retain the XY coordinates in the page for that image. Again, this allows you to, when you're reproducing the document as a visualization, you'd be able to maintain the format and layout. The model does not currently produce bounding boxes for text. So this is a roadmap feature for us that should be available in the near future. And then a couple questions around just best practices for document annotation. I think the particular question I saw was, how should the model handle missing values? So what I would do is I would think about structuring the description part of the Pydantic class when you're doing documentation as a system prompt. So what you'll do is just adhere to best prompt engineering practices there. So if you're trying to extract a field for something like customer ID, which I believe was the example called out, the best way to do that would be provide the description of what customer ID is, if including any format that might find on the page, and then you can also subsequently include a note to the model that just says, if you do not find this information, please don't make anything up. Return NA. So you can actually bake in sort of the exception class in that prompt as well. So those were the sort of broad bucket of questions that I found. We still have a few minutes left in the webinar, so Nico, if you saw anything in the chat that I didn't cover,
No, that's what I
let me
was
just see.
going through so far. No. Uh,
So
PDF
maybe,
text and tables that we showed in the. Okay, yeah, go ahead.
yeah. So I guess this is the idea about this question is processing a long document with
Yep.
documentation. So this will require a little bit of pre-processing. I think as Nico showed, there is an 8-page limit on processing through the API for documentation flags. So for this one, I would suggest breaking the document up into different chunks and then processing them iteratively, and then a post-processing step to combine the results and duplicating any findings as well.
And we have a cookbook to show an example of this. And the code is basically it's linked to a GitHub repo where you can just get the code if you need help with this.
And this question about probability percentages. So I assume the question is asked for confidence values for when we extract images, or sorry, when we extract information. So this is not available at the moment. I think this is also a roadmap item for us to provide sort of those confidence scores when we extract data from the documents. Great. Well, maybe pause for another minute or two, but I think that was
Well, I guess I saw a comment around Pydantic and saying it's mostly about Pydantic. Well, it's the definition of the schema is done through Pydantic. Everything else is done through Mistral AI. The reason why we use Pydantic is it's a standard that is pretty much used by anyone in the industry. And it's basically you don't need to relearn a new way of doing things. It's just the best way to define very easily the structured outputs that you need and that you want, and that lets the model at Mistral do the rest. So yes, definition through Pydantic, everything else done through Mistral. Yes. And I saw also a comment on Arabic and non-Roman languages. So that's a good question. The results can vary from language to language. Depending on the language, we have good support. What we are seeing is, for example, with Japanese, we sometimes have less good results, but no one does. Basically, we did Geoffrey that is not here, but he did actually last week a test, a comparative test between Mistral, DeepSeek, Qwen, and the rest on Japanese, and pretty much all the models were pretty bad. The good part is the results that you get straight out of the generic model are not the best, but it's very easy to fine tune. And because the model is open weight, it's very easy to fine tune. And what we are seeing is as soon as you start fine tuning it, you then have a dramatic improvement in terms of results, in terms of accuracy. And that's
Regarding Polish language support, it is one of the supported languages, so I'd expect good performance of that language.
There's one question about this one where you have basically in the document you have specific colors for columns, and the question is, well, should we instruct Mistral OCR to extract data based on the background color? You can. Usually, we would try to avoid doing so for the exact reason I gave around the. You should try to be the least tied to a format, regardless of what kind of format it is it color formatting, the position, or something like this. Describing what you're looking for is going to be more powerful than and more flexible than giving descriptions like colors, left, right, and things like this. If you have to, or if you notice a huge improvement in accuracy, you can. The model will definitely consider what you're telling it, but it's overall I would say try to avoid if you can, because then you're tying yourself, you're creating friction to use a different type of layout.
For this question, the model weights are not available on Hugging Face. This is a commercial model from Mistral, but available to use through the API.
Oh, there's one question, actually I don't know the answer of this one, on academic licenses. Do we have, I know for Le Chat we do you know, Yann, if we have academic licenses for OCR?
I don't believe so. So I think this would just fall under a normal traditional
Just normal
commercial
license.
plan. Yeah.
Okay. So this question around document limits and context, going out of the context window, basically. Usually no. Let's do it step by step. Yes, there's a processing limit when you use document annotation, or when you use annotation. It's usually we enforce a limit of 8 pages. When you just use when you don't use annotation and you just use OCR, that limit goes away. But it's when you do document annotation, then you definitely have that 8-page limit. And within these 8 pages, context, I've never seen context being an issue.
All right. Well, I believe that wraps up everything from the chat. So if there are any other questions, feel free to reach out through the help center on the website. But otherwise, it's great great having a conversation here. And thanks so much, Nico, for running through the all the content today.
Of course. Thank you, everyone.
All right. Thanks, everyone.